I'm Susan Caruso, the founding director of Sunflower Creative Arts, and you are listening to the Sunflower Bridge podcast, where we talk about being with children.
And I'm Lindsey Mills, the co-creator of Sunflower Bridge. Take a breath really deep and smile with us. Today we're going to pick up where we left off last week, and we're going to talk about formal lessons, because when you talk about the arts, inevitably this is the first kind of line of questioning that comes up for caregivers.
Yeah, and there's some real, we've thought a lot about it, we've talked a lot about it, there's a lot of research on it as well. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, who says that you need to have lessons? Who says that you need to have lessons to learn how to do something? So last time we talked about how all of the arts are there for us, for our own self-expression, and that it really is the idea of the process rather than the product. And I personally wanted to play the flute for, you know, a long time, for years before I was allowed to play the flute.
Yeah. Didn't you discover it through Peter and the Wolf?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I heard, I think it was on one of the young people's concerts that Leonard Bernstein did with the New York Philharmonic. And I remember, you know, and I watched all of those things. It was just, I was fascinated. And then I heard the flute first, and I was like, what is that? I love that sound.
Yeah.
And so from that point, for years, I just begged my parents, I want to play the flute, I want to play the flute, I want to play the flute. I didn't really start until I was about 10, which in reality was very good, because developmentally your brain really isn't ready to understand that, you know, the pedagogy and the repetitiveness, and there's that skill building and that muscle building that you need to do in order to get what you want to get, you know. So if I had started the flute much younger when I was asking, I would not have had the capacity physically, and my brain wouldn't have been ready to understand that. You know, it's around 9 years old, even though I was asking, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play. And I did get a recorder, and that was a good beginning thing to fool around with and to play a little bit. But brain development-wise, you're really not ready until around 9. And so it was not a horrible thing that I had to wait until I was about 10 to play.
Yeah.
And you know, you do, you know, to get proficient, there are things you need to do, and you have an idea in your mind of what you want to be able to, the sound that you want to have, and the things that you want to play, and the songs that you want to play. So around 9 is really a good time to start those kinds of lessons, because then you're ready, brain development wise, and physically too. You're more ready to do those kinds of things around an instrument.
Yeah.
Until then, you know, fooling around with, you know, playing around with the materials, playing around with the sounds of music, to have a lot of instruments in the house and to just plunk around on them.
Right.
And I think that I was probably in an advantage a bit to have started right when I was really ready, because then I started and I really took off and could do what I wanted to do with the instrument. I wasn't playing Peter and the Wolf for a long time, but I got to really do it. And like I said in the last episode, it just really became my voice and my confidence and my self-expression in all the ways, and it still is to this day.
Yeah, you still cherish that instrument and your relationship with it and the things you're able to do with it. And compare your experience with mine, where I was growing up in a household of musicians, and so there was music all around, there were instruments in the house, there was lots of records, we would listen to music together, and so I got lots of exposure, and I was curious and wanting to learn piano at around 5. And so I started with Suzuki style lessons. I think that was to my advantage because Suzuki, as far as methodologies go, it is more on the side of ear training and learning based on your inner knowing rather than learning theory right off the bat. Mm-hmm. And yet I look back on the years of piano lessons that I had at that age, and the thing that I remember most is the ice cream sundaes that I would have after my lesson. So I don't recall the lessons as much. And I think that speaks to my developmental stage at the time, and that I knew that I needed to follow the instructions of the teacher and to come with having practiced whatever it was that we worked on the previous week. But I did that for the reason that I would get an ice cream afterwards. It wasn't because I was so passionate about learning the notes in the chart. So, of course, later at around 12, 7 years into my piano lessons, I was memorizing multiple pages of classical pieces and performing them from memory and doing all of the competitive music for my age range. And yet I didn't want to do it anymore. I had reached this point where the practice felt boring. It felt like I have other things I want to be doing. I have friends. I have all these other interests that had come about by the time I was 12. And fortunately, my parents are not hardline and didn't say, well, you are the child of us, so you have to learn music and you have to be formally trained and on and on. And fortunately, they said, if you don't want to do it anymore, that's okay. You just finish the year and then you can move on to something else. And it was not long after I left piano lessons that I started begging my dad to teach me how to play guitar.
Yeah. So that was your heart instrument. Mm-hmm. And so then how did that go? You were 12.
Mm-hmm. And I was really ready, although it was so new to me that it did not come easily. It was hard. And
hard physically.
It was, yes. Much harder than the piano. I think it was wonderful that I started learning music on piano because it is very low impact, I would say. Guitar, my father, bless him, was so patient with me. I would get frustrated and burst into tears and I can't play the chord, I can't switch the chord, whatever it was. And he would just say, well, you can try it again. You can take a break. You can come back later. And I'm so grateful that I had all my teen years of just that casual feeling that we would explore a song together. He would show me what he was learning, what was exciting him about the guitar. And so that it was never compulsory. It was always just joy, just to keep the joy and playfulness in learning rather than pushing
the drudgery.
Yes.
and getting frustrated. Yeah. So that's the thing that we want to keep with young children and children before that age of being really developmentally ready, is that joy of the exploration of the sounds. And so, just fooling around with keyboards, to have a keyboard around, to have percussion instruments around, to be like you were really immersed in music with your family. All different kinds of music. And it just reminded me, oh yeah, I was too. My grandfather was a huge opera fan. And of course now I'm an opera fan. And so I heard all of that and he would talk about it and tears would come to his eyes. And he would say, oh, this Puccini, and this is my favorite opera. And he would tell stories about how, concert experiences that he had, and he played the trombone, and playing, and just his experiences. So I had opera. My mother was really into jazz. So and we lived outside of Philadelphia, so we had a really excellent music radio station. So I listened to all kinds of music for from an early age, and not vocal music. There wasn't a lot of singing going on, so I never really thought of myself. Actually, just starting with Sunflower was when I first started kind of singing with my own children. Singing, and they would just like So I'm not a great singer, but I love to sing. I love songs.
And my mother, the vocal coach, always says everyone can sing. Everyone can sing, and you may decide to practice, and so that you can improve your tone, improve your pitch. Those are things that you can work on, but you don't have to. You can sing, and there are no rules. You don't have to learn how to do it right to be allowed to use that voice of yours.
Really, and there's that we all have that gift. We all have that right to express ourselves. So be careful that you don't say things like, oh, well, I can't, I'm not a musician, I can play the radio. There have been people that were my age or older that have started instruments, because it spoke to them, and they became amazing musicians, or not amazing musicians to them because they were doing it. They're not going to go and play like Yo-Yo Ma, but just to have all that joy and learning at any age.
Yeah, I also think it's very important to remember that we create pressure where there need be none, and with visual art as well, or with theater, I feel children naturally find their way to the arts, and as we were discussing in the previous episode, when they find their way there, that can be this trigger for the adults to say, oh, we need to nurture this. Oh, we need to bring this out. Oh, we need to make it official. But that is, in my experience, what has driven very talented individuals away from what they are initially drawn to. Because as soon as it's a rule or a must, then it's no longer your heart's desire.
Yeah, really good point. I went to music school with some real good examples, amazing players, a flute player and an oboist. He was one of my best buds. Amazing musicians, and they were pushed and pushed and pushed from an early age to play. And they graduated from university, and they both gave up their instrument. They never played again once they graduated with their degree.
Yeah.
And one, the flute player, wanted to be a flight attendant, and it was the most wonderful thing, she wanted to fly, she wanted to travel, she didn't want to be playing the flute. And the oboist is an orthodontist. And creates, makes teeth, and he used to just fiddle with he was amazing carving, reeds, which is what you need to do. If you're an oboist, it's a difficult task because you have to make your own reeds. And so he made teeth and just,
and quite possibly he discovered this ability to do really tiny, minute things with his hands from that. It was definitely unexpected. Led there.
Yeah.
But
the reed was a real pain to him, and I'm sure he's very wealthy, and he's had a happier life.
Yeah,
because it wasn't his choice to play. So we have to be careful of not kind of living vicariously through our children.
Sure.
To like, oh, I wish that I had that opportunity. I'm going to make sure that my child gets to do all of these things. Really listen to them, really watch them, and it kind of goes into the idea of of formal instruction in a lot of levels, from being a young child. So you're watching really carefully, and they might say that they love this or that, or they're really interested in this and that. But you want to keep it open ended, so that they don't get that pressure to have it be a certain way, because that's also restricting their creativity, their innovative inspirations, all of those things that we could be squelching things unknowingly.
Yes.
And we definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. It really is bringing up all of these thoughts about how this is just curiosity when you really strip it down. It's that when we make it into an imperative, and that only a professional can be an artist, when we have that judgment in our own minds because we were taught from society to believe that only the best get to do it. It's you only get that privilege of making art if you're really, really good at it. And I think, just reflecting for myself now, I would have felt so hemmed in and squished by having to choose. I think that I would be much less happy as a grown person if I was pigeonholed from an early age because I was good at X, Y, or Z. If you see that your child is naturally drawn towards numbers, for example, we were talking about a young child who is showing great promise in math and obviously is really drawn to numbers and understands them at 4 years old. It's amazing. But that's not all that she is. And I would never want to create those limitations so that a person feels as if they are only capable of doing one thing.
Right, yeah, for sure. Or I have an example of one of my sons was doing all kinds of math in his head at a young age, before he went to school. And, he could multiply and divide, and it was amazing. And then when he went to school, they told him, oh no, you're too young to know how to do that, and you have to use your fingers. It's one and four will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he came home and he was doing that. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He said, you can do that in your head. You've added up, double digits in your head. What are you doing? He said, well, no, the teacher said I have to do it 7, 8, 9, 10. That's how I'm going to do it. And to this day, he sent me a little video of him, doing, some potting some things, and he said, I'm not good at math. And he was really good at math. So it kind of squelched it. And it speaks to that quote that you had said,
Yes, that I've heard this throughout my life. From first, I remember hearing it from an English teacher when we were learning poetry in 6th grade. And this teacher said, you have to learn the rules before you can break them. And
you have to learn the rules before you can break them.
You have to know what the rules are before you can break them. Theoretically, okay, I guess that logically makes sense. But I remember writing poetry before I had this formal lesson in sonnet writing, and I wondered, well, why is that more poetry than what I did? Why is that real and mine is fake? I didn't understand.
Yeah, and what yours was this natural expression that no one has ever heard of before, and you put rules on that, and then it becomes something else.
Yes.
I had a similar experience with playing music. My mother was, she could read some music, but she was primarily self-taught, and so we would play jazz, we would improvise. She'd play a tune, and I would just play, improvise along. I did not know what chords she didn't know what chords she was playing. I didn't. And it was fun. It was one of the few really beautiful connections that she and I had that was a real treasure to me. And when I hear music that we used to play, it makes me kind of cry, because I'm thinking, wow, those were the good times with my mother. So we're playing, and I get to high school, and my band director and he said, so what do you like to do? I love to play with my mom. We play bossa novas together, and it's just so much fun. So he said, oh, well, tell me, what's the chord progression? Do you know how to improvise over this diminished chord and this chord and that chord? And I didn't know anything. But he just put those rules on me tight. Mm-hmm. And I, from that, really, I think from that day on until, even still now, I figured, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, and I lost that, I was told, no, it has to be this way, right. And we don't want the rules to show up until later. And each of us has to kind of determine that for ourselves. But as parents with children, I think we can be more careful about that kind of thing, because they have so much to offer. Yeah. And we want to hear and see and have them really know that about themselves. Before those rules come on.
Thank you, as usual, for joining us here today. We would love to hear what you think about the show. If you have any stories you'd like to share with us about being with children, we would love to hear them. You can send us an email at lindsey@sunflowercreativearts.org, or you can send us a message on Instagram at sunflowercreativearts. The Sunflower Bridge podcast is kindly sponsored by Schweitzer Musical Productions.
See you next time.